Hello everyone, today we will explain the fifth part of the course on printing process, production printing operation. In the previous fourth part, we talked about the test printing process. After obtaining the correct sample approval, we enter the production printing operation. In the process, we need to control and adjust various elements in printing. Pay attention to the essentials of work. To achieve the principles of 3 diligence, 3 flat and 2 smalls. First, let's introduce control and regulation of various elements in printing. The first element is the control of the amount of ink delivered. During the printing process, we need to reasonably control the ink delivery amount based on the distribution of images on the printing plate. In the control of the amount of ink delivered, the main points are as follows. First, control of printing ink supply is associated with an increase in the temperature of the printing press. Second, during the printing process, the performance changes of the ink should also be paid attention to. Third, pay attention to changes in ink-water balance during printing. And finally, changes in ink transfer performance during the printing process should also be noted. The second is the control of the printing speed. In printing speed control, we need to pay attention to the accuracy of the printing press, changes in printing substrates, drying properties of printing inks, and the impact of printing pressure, etc. Third point, also a key and challenging aspect of control in the printing operation, is the control of ink-water balance. In the control of ink-water balance, we need to constantly pay attention to the consumption of fountain solution on the printing plate. The consumption of fountain solution on the plate is mainly due to the following reasons. First, the evaporation of the fountain solution. The fountain solution on the surface of the plate will evaporate to the surrounding area. It depends on the temperature and humidity of the environment, the ventilation of the printing workshop, and the speed of printing equipment, etc. Second, the consumption of water is related to the performance of the paper. These include the tightness and sizing of the paper. Tighter paper generally consumes less water. It also depends on the hydrophobic properties of the blanket. Except for paper, the consumption of water also depends on the amount of the liquid supply and the speed of printing. Generally speaking, the faster it prints, the more water you consume. Except for the plate, factors affecting water supply also includes the water absorption of the ink. In order to ensure the thickness of the printing ink layer, we need to control the amount of ink applied during printing. And different inks, water absorption varies. Generally speaking, the ink with lower water absorption also has a smaller water supply. The small water supply will also affect the transfer of ink. The following 2 pictures represents the water absorption performance of different inks and their tolerance after absorbing water. For inks, excessive water absorption can cause mottling in printed products. Insufficient water absorption can lead to scumming, and inks with higher water absorption also has a greater tolerance for water absorption. It is easier to control during the printing process. During the printing process, there are many factors for assessing the moisture level of the printed surface. Under normal circumstances, the following situation occurs. We would consider the moisture level on the plate to be excessive. First, the ink color of the printed product is pale. Even if the amount of ink is increased, the ink color is not deepened in a timely manner. Second, the amount of ink accumulated on the ink roller increases. Ink particles become thicker. Third, the paper is curled. Fourth, water droplets appear on the ink scraper during inking. The ink transfer roller is slippery. Fifth, the halftone dots are lacking. The marks at the bite area are wavy and faint. The ink color is dull and lackluster. Sixth, there are water shadows or water droplets at the tip of the blanket. There are water droplets dripping from both ends of the cylinder. Seventh, the plate often shows tinting. or the plate does not dry after the machine stops. The above situation occurs. This generally indicates that the moisture level on the plate is excessive. Water supply can be reduced. In addition, if there is a scumming phenomenon during printing, we can think that the water supply is too small, so increase the water supply. But when judging the scumming, in particular, we need to pay attention to the difference between tinting and scumming. The most typical difference between these two types of phenomena. It means that the location of the dirty spots generated by tinting will be different, and the dirty spots produced by scumming will appear in the same place during the printing process. In addition to monitoring the above three factors, we also need to monitor other factors. We need to check the sound and heat of the printing equipment, and real-time monitoring of vibrations and odors, and observe the overall operation of the printing press. Once an abnormality occurs, it should be dealt with in time, especially the care of the paper feeding part of the printing press. The overall height should be appropriate. The flatness around the stack should also be kept constant. During the printing process, we need to pay attention to the key points of the work. In particular, pay attention to 3 flat, 3 smalls, and 3 diligence. The so-called 3 flat refers to the cylinder, ink roller, and damping roller are all parallel. Strictly follow the requirements and data to ensure the cylinder packing and damping roller surfaces are flat. Uniform pressure between each other. The center distance of the 3 cylinders meets the standards, and it remains relatively constant during the production process. Cylinder parallel refers to the alignment of the blanket cylinder, the plate cylinder, and the impression cylinder. These 3 parallels seem simple. In fact, during the production process, it's not easy to do exactly. We need to keep the surface of the cylinder flat. You have to control the blanket cylinder and the plate cylinder, as well as its packing part. At the same time, to ensure that the testing agency of the machine is working normally, as well as safe operation. Ink roller, parallel and damping roller. Parallel mainly refer to ink roller to damping roller. Roller to roller, roller to plate. Have moderate pressure, uniform and consistent. This will ensure a stable supply of water and ink to the printing plate. In order to achieve a good ink-water balance, it is necessary to make the damping roller and ink roller parallel. The second is to achieve 3 smalls. That's the least amount of pressure, minimum amount of fountain solution, and minimum amount of ink, as well as minimum pressure. It means, on the premise of ensuring the normal transfer of ink, utilize minimal printing pressure. The advantages of using minimum pressure are as follows. It can reduce the difference in surface linear velocity between the cylinders. Dot deformation due to pressure will also be kept to a minimum, at the same time reducing the wear of the printing plate. Improve the resistance of printing plates. It also reduces the wear and tear of the printing press mechanism, and increase the lifespan of printing equipment. Minimum amount of water refers to the condition where the blank areas are clean, and the dots are smooth, using the least amount of water possible. The main reason is due to the presence of water. It will inevitably lead to a certain degree of ink emulsification. This results in a decrease in ink saturation, slow drying of the ink, and a series of related issues. Due to the presence of water, this will inevitably lead to deformation of the substrate. The surface tensile strength of the substrate will also decrease. This causes overprinting problems and dust and fiber loss on the surface of the paper. At the same time, we also need to control the minimum amount of ink. Under the premise of ensuring density, try to use as little ink as possible. If you use more ink, often leads to dot gain. This in turn affects print quality. Next is 3 diligence. Achieving 3 diligence, you need to check the surface moisture of the printing plate frequently. Regularly stir the ink, frequently clean the ink pan, wash the blanket and plate, and consistently check the printed sheets. 3 diligence operation should be regarded as a standardized operation throughout the entire printing process. First, regularly check the moisture level of the plate during the trial printing. After an ideal adjustment of the plate moisture, it doesn't mean that the moisture of the layout will always stabilize. This is because of the amount of water on the plate will be directly influenced by many factors. For example, the age of the printing plate, the speed of the printing press, when the viscosity and fluidity of the ink change, and when the temperature and humidity of the workshop change. The moisture of the plate will also change. The second is to stir the ink frequently during the printing process. The ink in the ink pen always guarantees a certain fluidity. When liquidity increases, the ink transfer effect during the printing process will be improved to a certain extent. At the same time, there is no need to add more flow aids to the ink. In addition to improving the flow of ink, stirring ink frequently can also help prevent the ink from skinning over in the ink pen, prevent more impurities from accumulating in the gap between the ink roller and the ink blade, in order to improve the transmission effect of printing inks. In modern printing presses, automatic inking system is often added. Sensors on printing equipment will be monitored at all times. Once reduced, automatic ink filling by automatic ink feeder. Simultaneously on many printing devices, automatic inking and stirring systems have also been added to the ink pen. Once the fluidity of the ink in the ink bucket decreases, the automatic ink stirring system will work to ensure the fluidity of the ink during the printing process. You also need to stir the ink pen frequently and clean the ink pen regularly. Make sure there is no dry ink and sundries in the ink pen. Otherwise, due to the ink skinning during the printing process and impurities caused by paper dust and fiber loss, it will affect the gap between the ink roller and the ink pen blade, causing ink delivery to be unsteady. Ink transfer failure occurred. And then, washing the blankets and the plates frequently. Frequent cleaning of blanket and plate surfaces. Remove impurities such as ink skinning and paper dust on its surface. Not only can it ensure good ink transmission, which is of great significance for generating clear and shiny dots, it is more important for large areas of consistent halftone and solid printing, and it can prolong the life of the printing plate and blanket. Of course, we should also regularly check the printed sheets during the printing process. Due to factors like water, ink and pressure, these conditions are not constant. There are also many factors that often change. Therefore, it is essential to frequently take printed samples during the printing process. Compare with standard proofs. Adjust the water-ink balance according to the changing conditions. This ensures that the printed products are as close as possible to the approved samples. Therefore, during the printing process, we constantly monitor various variables in the printing process. It is best to monitor this through data-driven methods. At the same time, we also need to achieve 3 flat, 3 smalls and 3 diligence. Only so, the offset printing process can proceed smoothly. Printing quality can be stable and continuously improved. The above is the main content of this course. Thank you very much.